Welcome to the Campfire Curmudgeon podcast. I'm Heidi S, and tonight we will not be joined by Nicholas Jones as we usually are. He's not able to make it here with me tonight, so this episode's going to be a little bit different than usual. Don't worry though, he'll definitely be joining us in the next episode. But for today, I'm just actually going to read to you some interesting stories from one of my favorite books. This book is called Weird Arizona. It's by Wesley Treat. It's a travel guide to Arizona's local legends and best kept secrets. I'm just going to read you some fun passages from this book. I highly suggest checking out this book as well as the rest of the Weird U.S. books that are in this same series. The first thing that I'm going to read you is some stories about La Llorona. That's a local legend here about a banshee lady or horse-faced creature or something. So I'll read you some of those stories. Once my friend saw La Llorona. I believed him because he never lies to nobody. He said that him and his parents were just driving by and that all of a sudden they saw a lady dressed in white. And once they got closer, they got to see her better. But once they saw the front of her, they said she didn't have a face, and she was carrying a baby all covered in white, but they didn't get to see the baby's face. They said it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. They punched the gas and went faster because they were scared. Here's another story. La Llorona wants your bones. Growing up, we heard a lot about La Llorona. Right before my great-grandma died, she told me this weird story. One night while she was walking home, she saw a lady in black ahead of her carrying a lamp. Remember, this was a long time ago, and there weren't street lights. So she walked up to the lady and asked what she was doing out so late. There was no reply, so she asked again. This time the lady stopped and looked at my grandma. She screamed. The lady did not have a human head, but that of a horse. At this point, my grandma got the heck out of there, tripping and falling all the way home. In another variation, La Llorona did not have enough cash to feed her children, and not wanting them to suffer, she tossed them off of a cliff. Too guilty to live with her sin, she also jumped. When she got to heaven, the Lord wouldn't allow her to enter till she found her children's bones, which had been scattered by the river. To this day, she still searches, willing to take anyone's bones, anyone who crosses her path. I always think that this story is pretty interesting. We haven't gotten any listener submissions on this particular legend, so if you have any stories or any other variations of this legend that you've heard, we would love to hear about those, and you can send that to us by email or on our Facebook. The next little segment I'm going to read to you here is on Dreamy Draw Dam. According to those in the know, an alien craft rocketed through Earth's atmosphere in October 1947. It dove for the American Southwest, misjudged its landing, and made an unscheduled and permanent stop in Lower Arizona. Apparently, the ship's pilots overestimated their altitude, encountered mechanical failure, or simply fell into hyperspace hypnosis and slammed headlong into the desert. One version of the story has the craft plummeting into a landfill in Cave Creek, but the more popular account states that it plowed into the sandy base of Squaw Peak just outside downtown Phoenix. What's more, 2 4.5-foot creatures were reportedly recovered from the wreckage, held briefly in cold storage inside a local screwball's freezer, then promptly collected by the men in dark sunglasses. After the pair of extraterrestrials was retrieved, the government, in typical fashion, covered the whole thing up with infrastructure. Dreamy Draw Dam, which can be seen from East Northern Avenue as you enter Dreamy Draw Recreation Area, was supposedly built on the site of the alien crash to conceal the wreckage. Rather than smuggling the vessel out, the Army Corps of Engineers simply hauled building material in and heaped it atop the craft. According to UFOologists, the dam is entirely unnecessary and exists solely to conceal the extraterrestrial debris. Why not load the spacecraft in the back of a semi and transfer it to a secret lab somewhere? The military already had one just like it, of course, that had been dropped in their laps 3 months earlier outside Roswell, New Mexico, and hidden in Area 51. Dreamy Draw Dam, by the way, lies immediately to the south of Highway 51. Coincidence? Accounts of the episode are difficult to come by, so it seems the men in dark sunglasses weren't doing their job. Even maps of the area that illustrate the dam's location are hard to dig up, not to mention signs of any kind in the park with the word dam on them. You will, however, find plenty of no trespassing signs threatening fines and imprisonment. But of course, you don't hide a spaceship by inviting everyone to see where it's buried. The real kicker, though, is that Maricopa County is adamant in its claim that the dam wasn't built until 1973. Obviously, the conspiracy runs deep. The hum beneath the dam. Have you heard anything about a place called Dreamy Draw Recreation Area? It's in Phoenix off SR 51 and Northern Avenue. The place is kind of a funny name, so I searched on Google to try and learn about it. Boy, was I in for a surprise. There's a wild rumor that the Dreamy Draw Recreation Center was the site of a UFO crash in October 1948, approximately 3 months after the famous Roswell crash. The story goes that locals recovered a pair of 4.5-foot-tall carcasses from the spacecraft, which were stored in a local man's freezer until the authorities could arrive. The government supposedly took over the investigation and later built the dam on top of the crash site. Some speculate that it was not needed for flood control purposes at all. Do I believe the story? Not entirely. But is it weird? Hell yeah. So I went to check this place out after school. It's Monday afternoon. Hardly anybody is around. I'm pedaling around on my bike and I find the dam. It's fenced off pretty well and there are lots of no trespassing signs everywhere. Pretty high security for an earthen dam with no water behind it. I take some pictures, look around, and I see the outfall of the dam buried in the bushes. I ride around to the other side and hike down into the low area. There's a large concrete box with a fence on 3 sides. As I'm getting down toward the bottom, I hear this steady, low-pitched humming noise. I can't figure out what it is. Is there really a UFO buried beneath this thing? As I glance around to see if anyone's watching, a plane crosses the sky. The place is not too far from the airport, but it's still close enough to hear jets taking off. That's probably what I heard, but I got some pictures if you'd like to see what I'm talking about. The lesson is that you'll never realize how much weird stuff there is out there until you start looking. And that's from somebody named Trevor Freeman, who sent in a letter for this book here. I'm sure if you've heard of any of the legends of Arizona, you've probably heard of the vortexes in Sedona. And this book has a little bit of information about those too, so I'm going to read you some of that. Sedona could easily be regarded as the prize gem in Arizona's scenic treasure box. Spires, cliffs, and mesas as tall as 1,000 feet overpower the landscape, their bright, warm hues and sheer size mesmerizing onlookers. While there may be larger formations in the state, few are as awe-inspiring, especially at sunset. But there's more to these sedimentary sentinels than their beauty. As well as being some of the most visually powerful creations on Earth, Sedona's red rocks are also considered to be some of the most spiritually charged. Native Americans have been drawn to them for thousands of years, and people continue to flock here even today, though most are of the New Age persuasion. Since the 1987 Harmonic Convergence, a gathering of spiritualists intending to ring in an era of universal peace, Sedona has been the destination and increasingly the home of metaphysical believers. They come to experience the location's power, which is considered to be in high concentration due to the site's mystifying vortexes, described as whirling masses of energy. The vortexes purportedly affect anyone who comes within a quarter mile of them. The energy contained in a vortex, it said, is similar to that inside every human being. Coming in contact with one causes a resonance that visitors often describe as a faint vibration or a sudden whoosh. Those who experience the phenomenon report being overcome with tranquility or rejuvenation, as if they've had their batteries recharged. Skeptics, or even those who've never heard of the vortexes, come back from Sedona's hiking trails with stories of emotional outbursts emotional outbursts, or at the very least, a subtle yet bizarre feeling they find too puzzling to explain. If any of our listeners have been to Sedona and been to the vortexes, if you have any stories about that, or if you have any stories about not feeling anything when you went to the vortexes, we'd love to hear about that. So definitely email us or write us that, or, you can even give us a call. The next story here that I'm going to read to you from this book is about the Mogollon Monster. The Sasquatch has for decades served as a frontman for the peculiar field of cryptozoology, the study of unknown animals or unknown to mainstream science. Sasquatch has trudged his way enormous step by enormous step into popular folklore, with sightings of the beast surfacing with regularity. In widely separated spots around the globe, the Yeti pops up among the Himalayas, the ever-popular Bigfoot emerges frequently in the Pacific Northwest, and Texas has reported numerous encounters with its big, thicket wild man. Yet few know that a member of this brotherhood of hairy hominids makes a home here in Arizona. He's known as the Mogollon Monster. The reclusive creature is described as being at least 7 feet tall, hairless in the face, but otherwise covered with a long, thick coat of either dark or reddish-brown hair. He travels with a wide, inhuman stride, sometimes leaving footprints measuring 22 inches in length. Those who say they've crossed paths with Mogollon regularly describe an eerie silence prior to their encounter. An appreciable stillness in the woods that generally surrounds predatory animals. Even more common are reports of a strong, very foul stench, which has been described as that of a dead fish, a skunk decaying, peat moss, or by someone with an apparently exceptional keen sense of smell, the musk of a snapping turtle. Most sightings of the Mogollon Monster, as suggested by the name, occur in and around the Rim country. The lumbering giant reportedly covers territory stretching from Prescott north to Williams, east over to Winslow, and south down to the Heber area. But most agree he generally sticks to the vicinity of Payson near the Rim's edge. It was near Payson that the creature was spotted by cryptozoologist Don Davis, whose run-in is generally accepted as the first known encounter with the Mogollon Monster. David said he witnessed the tall, hairy beast during a Boy Scout trip in the mid-1940s when he was about 13 years old. He and his fellow scouts were camping near Tonto Creek when something in the night woke him up as it rummaged through the boys' belongings. Davis called out to the noisemaker, thinking it to be a fellow scout, and the figure approached him and stood near his bed. Later, he described what he saw. There, standing less than 4 feet in front of me, was a monster-like man. The creature was huge. Its eyes were deep-set and hard to see, but they seemed expressionless. His chest, shoulders, and arms were massive, especially the upper arms, easily upwards of 6 inches in diameter, perhaps much, much more. Yet an even earlier report has surfaced from a 1903 edition of the Arizona Republican, in which a visitor to Arizona by the name of I.W. Stevens recounts his confrontation with a creature he referred to as the Wild Man of the Rocks. His encounter occurred further north within the Grand Canyon, and the story may be one of the earliest written records of such a sighting. Stevens described the Wild Man as having long, white hair and matted beard that reached to his knees. When he approached for a closer look, Stevens saw that the creature wore no clothing, and upon his talon-like fingers were claws at least 2 inches long. He also noted that a coat of gray hair nearly covered his body, with here and there a spot of dirty skin showing. While this is not a traditional description of the beast we've come to know, we could infer that Stevens had run across an elderly Sasquatch, possibly suffering from a touch of the mange. Stevens went on to tell how the canyon dweller threatened him with a large club and screamed the wildest, most unearthly screech he had ever heard. After Stevens discovered the beast drinking the blood of 2 young cougars that he had just beaten to death, attempts to explain the origins of the Mogollon monster vary in detail, but for the most part implicate a tormented Indian bent on revenge. One variant tells of a prehistoric tribe which, for untold reasons, exiled its chief. The chief called upon the spirits and was transformed into a hirsute bogeyman, which enabled him to scare away his former clan. He lives on today, continuing to defend his territory. Further variations identify the Mogollon monster as a pioneer who was the victim of an Indian attack. There it is again. I'm going to interrupt this story. I think they mean a Native American or an American Indian. He escaped into the woods but was cursed by the spirits and went insane. On a more modern incarnation of the story, Dolan Aris, an Arizona official state balladeer, portrays the monster in a song as an environmentally conscious being that only eats children who litter. In comparison with his kin, however, the Mogollon monster enjoys scant notoriety. He's sort of Bigfoot's loser cousin, unable to hack it as a legitimate crypto critter. He ekes out a living performing at conferences and children's parties, hoping one day to get some consulting work. Besides, he really isn't seen that often. Sightings that approach legitimacy are few and far between. Then again, he may not be around much. It's possible he treks down here from the northwest only for the winters. The abominable snowbird. Bit of an Arizona joke there for all you. The next thing I'm going to talk about here from this book is Hunt's Tomb. And this is one of the pyramids. I'm not sure how many people know this, but there's quite a few pyramids in Arizona, kind of landmarks, and this is one of them. Hunt's Tomb, high in the great urban getaway that is Phoenix Papago Park, a gleaming pyramid shines in the bright Arizona sun. Perched atop one of the park's tallest buttes, it offers an impressive view for its distinguished resident, mustachioed Arizona politico George W.P. Hunt. When the Arizona Territory gained statehood in 1912, Hunt became its first governor and then was re-elected again and again. In all, you might say he served a record 7 terms, although that opens up a fairly large can of nits for picking, since at least one of his elections was plagued with some irregularities. But never mind about that. When Hunt died in 1934, he was entombed in the pyramid among the Papago Buttes, a dazzling sight covered in what appears to be white bathroom tile. Easily accessed by a short trail, the glossy white structure can be so bright under the summer sun it could easily leave any curious visitor with flash burns. And I've actually seen this when the sun hits it like that, and it does kind of have almost a shine to it, almost reflecting the sun back at you. It's pretty cool. And this pyramid was actually supposedly a copy of a natural stone version. And that one, let's see if it says here. That one holds the remains of Charles Debril Poston, the man who successfully lobbied to establish the Arizona Territory and consequently earned himself the designation Father of Arizona. So that's another really cool Arizona pyramid we have, and I know there are a couple more. This book has so many interesting stories and legends and just fun little facts about Arizona. And even though this podcast, we want to focus on paranormal stories from all over, definitely the ones from Arizona are special to me since I've grown up here my whole life and I find these really interesting. I try to go to all of the different locations and experience all the different things. I know Nicholas and I have talked about going to places like the Mogollon Rim to see if we can see the Mogollon monster or any of the UFO activity that's supposed to take place there. Maybe we'll have to take a look at this dam and maybe the vortexes in Sedona. Let me know if you guys think that that would be a fun, if you would have fun with that episodes. Let me know. I think that's all I'm going to read from for today, just so I can let you know what that is again. That's all the stories I read today are from a book called Weird Arizona. Again, that's by Wesley Treat. And it's a travel guide to Arizona's local legends and best kept secrets. I highly suggest picking up this book or picking up the one for your home state. If you're not from Arizona, I know they have these books for some of the other various states, and they're so cool. You might be surprised how much information is in those books that you never knew about your own home state. So I just wanted to thank everybody for bearing with me here. I'm not so good at this alone. It's much easier with my co-host here. I'm sure you'll all miss him very much. Say, Nicholas, come back. But he says he'll be here next episode, so don't worry. And you can find us on Facebook. Search Campfire Curmudgeon. You can find our page. You can find us on Instagram, also under Campfire Curmudgeon. We can be found at campfirecurmudgeon.com. On the website as well as the Facebook, there are links to our other various social media sites. We also have our phone number there. If you guys want to give us any feedback or tell us any of your stories, but you don't feel like typing them out, you can give us a call, leave your story on the hotline, and we might even play that back. If you don't want us to play it on the air, be sure to let us know that you'd prefer we transcribe it, and then we can read that story to everybody. We can also be found on, I said Instagram, on Twitter. That is, I believe that's Camp Curmudge. Nicholas usually does that one. Let me know if that's wrong. If that's wrong, you can find a link to our Twitter on our Facebook page. And again, that's where you can find all of our social media links. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great day, night, evening, work, whatever. Thanks.